is happening? So I'm a little verklempt here. Well, I am from Texas, so howdy. It's so good to be here with all of you. I live in Austin, Texas, which is our blue dot in our red state. Lots of fertile ground there. With my husband, Doug, and our 8 children. I know. It's a lot. I tell people we became pro-life and we couldn't stop breeding. The truth is, though, we have to keep having kids because we have to keep creating new conservatives. So that's my plan. We'll just outbirth them. So our daughter is 12, and she'll be 13 on Saturday. Pray for us. And yeah, she already knows everything. Yeah. Then I had 4 boys in a row, so they are 7, 6, 5, and 4. I know, I was there. And then we had twin girls. They're 2 years old. And then I have a 5-month-old baby, little boy. So, yeah, so we do know how it happens, and we like it. So in our set of 4 boys, the first 2 boys are 11 months apart. The second 2 boys are 14 months apart, and the youngest 2 are 6 months apart. And even though I move fast, I don't move quite that fast. So our youngest son in the set of 4 was actually gifted to us through open adoption. And I'll tell you that story. I was in Atlanta speaking for a pregnancy center, and I'm in this group on Facebook. There's about 30 of us women. We're all really good friends. And one of the women in there lives in Maryland, and she's a sign language interpreter, and she interprets for the deaf community in her church. She became friends with a woman. This woman was pregnant. This was her 4th baby. And she was married, but this baby had actually not been conceived with her husband. She had been a victim of a violent assault and had conceived. And she made an adoption plan for her son. And 2 weeks before her due date, she got an email from the adoptive family saying, "We've been thinking about it, and we've decided that since there's a possibility that your child could also be deaf, we don't want him." So another family was called, but they weren't interested because the baby was biracial and they wanted a white baby that looked like them. So my friend posts in this Facebook group, and she says, look, here's the situation. Please be praying for this woman. And if any of you happen to know anyone who would be ready to take a baby, adopt a baby in 2 weeks or less, let me know. So I saw it pop up, and I said, we will. And so my friend called me immediately, and she said, are you nuts? And I was like, yeah, I mean, look, we have so many babies in our house right now. I'm not even sure we'd notice another one if you threw it in. It's just. So she said, okay, well, I'm going to call the mom and let her know that I found a family. And I was like, amazing, do that, because we are in. So I hung up the phone, and I thought to myself, I should call my husband. And what I really thought was, can I send this in a text message? But I thought I better not. So I called him, and he was a little mad. I don't know if mad's the right word. You know, he was more panicked because, see, my husband is actually a stay-at-home dad. So this really affects him more than me. So he didn't talk to me for a couple days, and then he finally called me, and he said, I've been writing a pros and cons list, and he said, every time I think of a reason, this is crazy, this is insane, we should not do this, he said, I look into our future, and that little boy is always there. And he said, I think we should do it. And I said, honey, I'm so glad to hear you say that, because the lady doing our home study is going to be at the house tomorrow. So would have been weird if he had said no. So 2 weeks later, a baby was born, and we went to Maryland to meet him and his amazing mom for the first time. And we were trying to think of what we wanted to name him. We knew we wanted to name him something that started with the letter J. His birth mother's name, it starts with J, and her 3 other children, their names start with J, so we wanted to honor her in that way. And we are Roman Catholic, and so we like to name our kids a family name and a saint name. And there are so many saints, though, and I could not think of a good name. So I went online to like saints.com or something, and I clicked on the letter J, and I started going through the list, and nothing was jumping out to me. I got to the bottom, and I saw St. Jude. And for those of you who don't know, in the Catholic faith, St. Jude is the patron saint of desperate or impossible cases. And I thought, you know what? That's the perfect name for this little boy, because there had to be times when his mother felt like God had given her an impossible cross to bear. There had to be times of desperation. When she found out that she was pregnant, she went to family and friends and people in her church looking for advice, looking for counsel, for help, for support, for anything. And almost every single one of them said to her, well, you know, this is the one time that abortion is okay. This is the one time that abortion is acceptable. These are those exceptions that we always talk about. And she very courageously looked back at them and said, it's either a baby all the time or it's a baby none of the time, and God doesn't make mistakes. But there had to be times where she felt overwhelmed, her child being rejected 3 times in the womb before birth, once because of how he was conceived, then again because of a possible hearing deficiency that he doesn't have, and then again because of the color of his skin. There had to be moments of desperation, but every day she woke up and she chose life for her son. I think about Jude, I think about his life. I recognize truly what a miracle it is that he is with us. But honestly, when I look at the abortion rate across this country, almost 1 million abortions being committed annually in the United States, over 2,000 abortions being committed every single day in this country, I recognize that truly any child who is born into our society today is a miracle. Now, I'd love to tell you I've always stood up here and defended life, but you know that's not true. I worked for Planned Parenthood for 8 years of my life. I got involved in college. I grew up in a pro-life Christian home. I have amazing parents. You know, we were not a family, though, that sat around the dinner table and talked about abortion. We didn't talk about what it was to be pro-life or pro-choice. I think it was a different time then, the late 70s, early 80s. Abortion really wasn't in the media like it is today. Nobody was really talking about it. It was still pretty taboo. Nobody was standing up on stage and shouting their abortion, right? It was just a different time. And I think my parents just believed that because they had taught me the biblical path to marriage, that as long as I followed that path, then abortion would never be on the table. So why do we need to talk about something so incredibly unpleasant? I tell people that we were a family who said that we were pro-life, but we did not do anything to actually be pro-life. I went to college. I met a woman with Planned Parenthood. She was telling me, asking me what I knew about the organization. Honestly, I think that was the first time I'd ever even heard the name Planned Parenthood before. She started giving me all the talking points that we've all heard in the media. She started telling me that without access to Planned Parenthood, low-income women would have absolutely nowhere else to go for health care. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I do not know the plight of a low-income, uninsured, underinsured woman. I've always been very blessed to have health care available to me whenever I needed it. So when she told me this, I didn't have any reason to believe that she was not being honest. But here's the reality. In the United States, there are approximately 600 Planned Parenthood facilities. In the whole United States, 600. There are over 10,000 federally qualified health centers that provide comprehensive health care for men, women, and children at low or no cost who are low income. That 10,000 does not include rural public health centers, hospital health systems, county health departments. It doesn't include the over 2,500 pregnancy resource centers that provide limited medical care for women. It also doesn't include the tens of thousands of group and private practice physicians that accept government subsidy programs like Medicaid. So we are talking about 600 Planned Parenthood clinics compared to literally tens of thousands of other facilities, yet Planned Parenthood is the only place women can go. You see, it's a lie, but that's what happens with a lie. When people speak a lie enough times, others will begin to believe that it is true. And then the most interesting thing happens, then the people speaking the lie, they will begin to believe that it is true. She asked me what I thought about abortion. I told her that I was raised pro-life. She said, that's good. She said, pro-lifers, they're good people. They're just sort of misguided. She said they don't understand that without access to safe and legal abortion, women are going to be forced to go where? Back alleys, right? And that's going to be just awful. Women are just going to be, I don't know, just dying on every street corner from these back alley abortions. And then these pro-lifers, they want to take away our rights to our bodies, to do with them what they will. And then what's next? They're going to start going after other rights. They're going to tell us, women no longer have a right to vote. And then what? Then they're going to really take us back and tell us women are no longer allowed to wear pants, just skirts all the time. And I thought, well, I like pants. So I signed up immediately. But you see, what I didn't know was that what took place in these supposed back alley clinics, what took place before Roe v. Wade, before 1973, is actually no different than what takes place today inside of legal storefront abortion facilities. Women are still dying from abortion. Women are still getting infections from unsterilized instruments. Women are still having untrained people perform invasive medical procedures on their bodies. Women are still being physically and emotionally maimed for the rest of their life. And abortion on its face can never actually be deemed safe. Why? Because in order for an abortion to be deemed successful, a unique and individual human being must be killed. That is the antithesis of safety, and friends, that can never be considered health care. You see, I didn't know all that. And I submit to you tonight that it is what the majority of women in our society today do not know that leads them in the doors of the abortion facilities. It's what they do not know about their bodies, their fertility, their unborn child, the abortion procedure itself, and it's what they do not know about the radical, life-changing, life-saving mercy of Jesus Christ. That's what leads them in the doors of these facilities. And people ask me all the time, Abby, how is it that you went from being this good Christian kid to being someone who ran an abortion clinic? How'd you go from being that kid to being someone who laid on an abortion clinic table, not once, but twice, to take the lives of my own children by abortion? Abby, how did that happen? And I guess I don't have just a silver bullet sort of answer for you tonight, except to say that it happened just a little bit at a time, because that's the way that sin comes into our lives. It's one little lie at a time. It's one little justification at a time. See, I don't know. Your sin may not be abortion, but every single one of us in here, we all have issues. And the sin in your life crept into your life the same way that abortion crept into mine. And it's one little compromise at a time. But while I know that Satan, our true enemy, has to sort of sneak around to do his work, I know that when God wants to change your life, it can literally happen like that. And that's what happened to me in the fall of 2009. 2009 had been an interesting year for me. April of that year, I had been awarded Planned Parenthood's Employee of the Year Award. You can hold your applause. I know you're all very proud of me. But I was pretty excited. Then in August of that year, I was called in with my supervisor. We were going to be going over our budget in a budget meeting, and I was instructed during that time that we were going to be doubling our abortion quota, a certain number of abortions that we had to sell to women coming into our facility. And I thought, no, that has to be a mistake. That can't be right. Because, see, for 8 years, I had been telling everyone who would listen, including the media, that our goal at Planned Parenthood was to keep abortion safe, legal, and rare. And it had to be true, right? Because we all said it. Everybody said it. I mean, the president said it. Bill Clinton said it. Obama said it. They wouldn't lie. So it had to be true, right? It had to be true. But here it was in black and white. So I said something to my supervisor, and she said to me, Abby, why would we ever want to reduce the number of abortions? That's how we make our money. And I don't really know how I justified that conversation, but somehow I did. And about a month later, we had a visiting physician come in from out of town. And he explained to me that at his own private practice abortion facility, he performed abortions differently than we did at Planned Parenthood. Our protocol was simple. We got a woman back into the room. We did perform an ultrasound on her, really only for one reason, and that was to determine how far along she was in her pregnancy so that we would know how much to charge her for the abortion. We did not tell her we were performing the ultrasound. We did not give her the opportunity to look at the ultrasound. We did not tell her if she was pregnant with one baby or multiple babies. After the gestational dating was captured, the ultrasound was rolled away. The doctor came in. He began the abortion procedure by inserting a suction tube, a suction cannula, into the woman's uterus. And he would just start blindly poking around inside of the woman's uterus until he thinks he has enough blood and tissue in a glass jar. That glass jar goes into a lab called the POC lab. POC stands for products of conception. What is the product of conception? The baby, but you can't say baby inside of an abortion clinic. So we said POC or POC, or if the staff was feeling funny, they would say that it stood for pieces of children. And that POC technician would take everything in that jar. She would dump it into a glass baking dish that sat on top of an X-ray light box, and she would reassemble the parts of the baby. And why did we do that? Because if we left the head or an arm or a leg or part of the spine inside of the woman's uterus, she could develop a very serious infection that could be fatal to her. Now, please understand, I am talking about first trimester abortion. A lot of times when I start talking about parts of the body, people think I'm talking about second and third trimester abortions, late abortions. I am not. I'm talking about first trimester abortions when over 80% of abortions are committed in this country. After all of the parts have been accounted for, the POC technician will take everything, put it into a red biohazard Ziploc sort of bag, and at the end of the day, all the red bags of babies go into a freezer in the POC lab that the staff jokingly called the nursery. And once a week, a biohazard medical waste company, ours was Stericycle, would come into our facility, pick up all the red bags of babies, and take them to their facility where they are incinerated. And that's abortion day in, day out, over 2,000 times a day. And I had only worked at Planned Parenthood, so I only knew their protocols. But this doctor was explaining to me that it is, of course, safer for the patient if the doctor can actually use the ultrasound during the entire abortion procedure so that he can see the part of the body where he's performing surgery. I thought, well, that makes sense to me. So I went back to my supervisor and I said, look, if this is the safest type of abortion, why isn't this the standard of care inside of Planned Parenthood? And she said, well, yes, it is safest for women, but she said using an ultrasound during the entire abortion procedure takes up about an extra 3 minutes of time. And our goal inside of Planned Parenthood was to have a woman on the table, off the table, abortion complete in 5 minutes. And see, if you're trying to perform anywhere between 30 and 60 abortions in one day with one abortionist, you just don't have an extra 3 minutes of time per patient. So I accepted that answer. But one day this doctor was there to perform abortions, and he asked me to come in and assist him during an ultrasound-guided abortion procedure. My job was to hold the ultrasound probe on the woman's abdomen so that the doctor would be able to, in his words, visualize his target. We did the ultrasound. We found that she was 13 weeks along. Now, at 13 weeks, everything is fully formed on an unborn child. Arms, legs, fingers, toes, eyes, ears, heart is beating, brain waves are active. Every single internal organ that we sit here with inside of our body today is fully formed on an unborn child by 13 weeks gestation. Outside of the womb, the baby's about this big, and we can even tell if it's a boy or a girl. Now, I stood there looking at that screen, feeling apprehensive, not knowing what I was about to see, recognizing that, this really looked like a baby, but it couldn't be, right? Because I had been taught abortion science. Abortion science teaches us that a pregnancy remains a pregnancy and doesn't magically turn into a baby until the mother decides that pregnancy is wanted. So if the mother never decides that that pregnancy is wanted, 7, 8, 9 months pregnant, that baby's never wanted, then that baby's never a baby. It's just tissue, cells, something to be discarded. And this woman was here for an abortion, so certainly this was not a baby, but it really looked like one. I could see his face, I could see his mouth, his nose, I could see his arms and his legs. And I felt nervous. And I could see the abortion instrument, that suction cannula, the suction wasn't yet turned on. I could see it going into the woman's uterus. And I could see it getting closer and closer to the side of that baby. And when it finally touched his side, he jumped. And he began flailing his arms and legs as if he was trying to move away from that abortion instrument, but there was nowhere for him to go. And when the doctor had the instrument in the right position, he asked the technician to turn on the suction machine, and he said, "Beam me up, Scotty." And the suction was turned on, and I think people make the assumption that what I saw next was the worst part, that seeing a child become torn apart in his mother's womb would be the worst part, and that was bad, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that when I had the opportunity to do something, when I had the opportunity to intervene on behalf of this innocent child, I just stood there. And I did nothing. I remember wanting to sit this woman up and to say, look what's happening to your baby. But I didn't. I just stood there and I watched. In just a few seconds, the ultrasound screen was black, and I knew that that meant the abortion had been successful. I didn't know what my life was going to look like, but I knew that I could never participate in abortion again. So I reached out to the pro-life group in my area, these people who I had been taught were my enemy for 8 years. They were also the same people who had always told me if I ever wanted to leave, they would help me get out. And I didn't know where else to go, so I reached out to them, and after speaking with them, I decided that I was going to resign from the clinic. And I told the pro-life group, the Coalition for Life, that I was going to be leaving that day, and so they sent a young man out to be on the sidewalk with me just to be sure that I was able to leave without incident. His name is Bobby. I was taking my last load of items out to my car, and I waved to Bobby, and I told him that I would be by their office later on in the week. And I got in my car for the last time, and I pulled out of that driveway. I took a left. And I immediately came to a stoplight, and I looked in my rearview mirror. And Bobby didn't know I could see him. He didn't know I was looking, but I watched him. He put his arms in the air, and he fell to his knees. Because, there had to be times where they looked at me and they said, she is never going to leave. God, why are you even prompting us to pray for this woman? She's mean to us. She mocks us. She mocks our faith. There were probably some times when they prayed even in disbelief, wondering if that day would ever come. And then one day, just like that, it did. You see, I'm standing in front of you today as a testament to the power of conversion. No one is beyond the power of conversion because no one is beyond the power of Jesus Christ. And that's what this movement must be about. It must be about conversion of heart, because conversion of heart is how you change a culture. Conversion of heart for the women who are considering abortion, that we send them to trusted pregnancy resource centers, life-affirming centers that will show them that there is safety there, that they are protected, that they are loved unconditionally, that there is help, that they are not alone, that we are there to accompany them on this journey no matter how hard it gets. And sometimes that journey is hard. Conversion of the hearts for the men involved. See, I believe one of the primary antidotes to abortion is fatherhood. But we are living in times where almost half of young men in our society do not have fathers in the home. And if I'm perfectly honest with you, I believe that this is an area where the church has failed. We have not stepped up to mentor these young men. We have not taught them how to be godly husbands and providers and protectors and fathers. And because we have failed, they have failed. Because we have failed, our society has failed. I don't know if you ever see what happens at youth groups around our country in these churches. Now, I'm sure all of your churches you go to, your youth groups are fantastic. But I believe by and large that the church has failed our young people, period. Because I look at what's happening in youth groups across our country at these different churches, and I see that they spend a whole lot of time playing laser tag and paintball and having pizza parties and doing all this fun stuff. Fun stuff is fine. But I'm not sending my kids to youth groups so that they can be the best laser tagger among their friends. I am sending them to learn about Christ so that they can go out into this country where there is significant moral decay, so that they can be salt and light and learn how to be warriors for Christ. But we are failing because we are teaching our children that being a Christian is fun. It's not fun. It's hard. It's hard work because it's countercultural. And anything that's countercultural is hard. It's difficult. It means that you will be persecuted. It means that you will be made fun of. We are not here to teach our kids that being a Christian is fun. We're here telling them that God is so worried about their happiness. But just a news flash here, guys. I believe that God is worried a lot less about our happiness than he is about our holiness. But we're sitting around giving our young people a false sense of Christianity. So guess what? When it gets hard, when it gets tough, they flee. Because we haven't taught them how to be warriors. We haven't taught them what suffering truly looks like. We have failed. The teen suicide rate in the United States is higher than it has ever been, because we have convinced our young people that life is all about happiness. They were talking about this story of this young girl. I see this thing beeping at me that I should be done, but I'm not. So, They were talking about this story about this young girl that's going to private school now because there's a little boy changing in her locker room. And I applaud the parents for taking a stand and moving her, but you know what I would have done? I think I would have been participating in a little civil disobedience. You know what I would have done? I would have gathered a bunch of my parent friends. I would have gone to that school every day. I would have brought big sheets to hold up, separating those girls away from that little boy, not to shame that little boy, but to protect our little girls. And I would have done it every single day. And I would have dared that school system to kick me out. I don't know what happened. I don't know when it happened. I don't know how it happened. But somehow in our society, parents have been convinced that they are no longer the moral authority over their children. And so what we have done is we have given our power away. We have given it away to the state, to the government, to the school system, to their peers, to social media, to the internet. And I'm telling you, I am sick of it. And I am sick of Christians just standing around and letting it happen over and over and over again. I'm glad that that little girl is no longer in that school. But what about the other little girls that are still being forced to change in front of that little boy in the locker room? Who is going to go back and stand up for them? Who is going to go back and protect their modesty? If not us, then who? I always talk about homeschooling. We don't homeschool our kids. Our kids go to a private school. But I am involved in the issues relating to public school as if I have children in the public school. You know why? Because I'm not going to let other people's children suffer because their parents have given away their moral authority. I love Jesus so much. I love Jesus Christ. I love reading about his 33 years of ministry. We don't know a whole lot about it, but what we do know, I love reading about it. I love that Christ taught us about compassion and mercy and love. But you know what else Christ taught us about? Justice. Justice. Are we truly fighting for justice? Or have we allowed the apathy in our churches to keep us silent? Have we allowed society to tell us that by being a Christian, we must be silent on the issues that are plaguing our society? Because I'm going to tell you right now, I will not be a doormat in this society. I will be the squeaky wheel because I have had enough. I have had enough of our society convincing women that killing their children in the womb is acceptable. I am tired of over 2,000 of our babies being mutilated every single day in their mother's wombs, the place that should be the safest. I am tired of this perverted sexual culture going into our school system, being in our TVs, and indoctrinating our children. I am sick of it. And I am begging you, I am pleading with you to stand with me and to say enough. Because as much as Jesus taught us about compassion and about mercy, when Jesus needed justice, he showed it. And you know how he showed it? He flipped tables. And I don't know about you, but I am Jesus flipping tables mad about what is happening in our society today. When we are apathetic on issues that plague the family, we are complicit in those issues. And I don't know why we're quiet. What? Because we're worried about offending people? The truth will always be offensive to those who run from God. Don't worry about offending somebody. Are you kidding me? The people who are on the other side of these issues, they are not in the least bit concerned about offending you. In fact, they revel in your offense. They love to make a Christian mad. And we just sit there and we take it and we take it and we take it. I'm here to tell you, enough. It's time to stand up. And to the men who are here, I want to encourage you in this fight. Because you have been failed by secular feminism in our society today. Men have been told since the 70s that abortion and issues surrounding the sanctity of human life are not your concern, that you are to sit down, that you are to be quiet, because this is a woman's issue. I am sorry about that. I am sorry that secular feminism has effeminated the men in our society today. And I am here to declare 2020 the year of the man. That men will stand up and take their place in this fight. That they will take their place as spiritual leaders of their home, as leaders of their family. That they will not be quiet. That they will not sit down. That they will not shut up, but that they will stand. That they will be vocal, that they will commit. Because you know what? No matter what feminists tell you, you know what women want? Women want to be protected. They want to be provided for because that's how God made us. Don't let society fool you. We need you, men. We need you to step up and take your place. Guys, now is the time. Now is the time for all of us to commit, to serve, to sacrifice, to give, like maybe we have never done before. Because our goal is twofold. Our goal is to first make abortion illegal. Our second goal is to make abortion unthinkable. And I think for a lot of years, the pro-life movement has been waiting for this legislative cavalry to come riding up over the hill and to save us from the evil of abortion. That's not going to happen. You know why? Because you are the cavalry. You are the people who are going to change our society. God is asking each one of you to commit. Now, I'm not saying that pro-life politics isn't important. Obviously, I'm here, I'm supporting this organization, I believe in it. And when we go to the polls to vote, we should all be proud single-issue voters. Because you can bring me any other issue that plagues our society today, and I can bring it back to the one core truth. And that is this: that because we have dehumanized the most marginalized, the most vulnerable in our society, the unborn, that dehumanization has caused a ripple effect in our nation that has dehumanized so many others. If you want to bring back humanity to our society, you will begin by standing up for the unborn. And I would assume that I know how all of you are going to vote, sorta. But just in case, I want to say this. When we go to the polls in 2020, it's going to be an important year. A very important year. And when we go to cast our vote for the next president of the United States, there will only be one man on that ticket who is willing to stand against the barbarity of abortion. And that ought to be who we vote for in 2020. And I don't care what he writes on his Twitter. I don't care about his past transgressions. I don't care. Because you know what? Abortion is just that bad. Abortion is that heinous. It is that disgusting. It is that terrible. It is that barbaric. Anyone who is willing to stand up and defend the unborn, I don't care what they're doing out there. Because abortion is so bad. I am willing to cast my vote for the person who will solidly stand against this barbarism. That's it. You are not here by accident tonight. You are here because God has destined you to be here. And in a few minutes, Lynn's going to come up here and he's going to ask you for money. And that's not a surprise, right? Everybody knew that was coming. If not, surprise. That's the most important time of this evening. That's not the time for you to get up and go potty. You can hold it another 5 minutes. That's the most important time of this evening because that's the time that God wants to do business with you. You're here because God wants you to make a commitment. And they're probably going to ask you to be generous with your giving, but I'm not going to ask you to be generous. I'm going to ask you to be sacrificial, and here's the difference. Being generous is giving out of your excess, what you have left over, you don't really want to get rid of, but you will. It's not going to really hurt. Being sacrificial means making the decision to go without so that those who are facing an unplanned pregnancy, those who are riddled with crisis, so that those women will be able to go with. And that happens through effective legislation, through partnership with pregnancy resource centers, and it happens because of the work that is taking place here at the Family Policy Alliance. So tonight, I want you to be sacrificial. There's a story one time about Mother Teresa. She was on a plane with somebody, and this businessman, and she was talking about this orphanage that she wanted to begin in Calcutta. And the businessman wrote her a check. He was so moved, he wrote her a check for $250,000, and she looked at it, and she gave it back to him. And she said, I don't want this check. And he's like, what, are you crazy? It's $250,000. And she said, no, that didn't hurt you, I can tell. And so he took the check and he ripped it up. He wrote another one and he gave it to her, and it was for over $1 million. And as he gave it to her, he said, now that one hurt. Sacrifice. That's what we're called to do. Because our society needs great sacrifice from us right now. And the babies that will be saved from abortion because of the amazing work that's happening here, they deserve every sacrifice we're willing to give them. And you know what? I just want you to be better than me. When I had the opportunity to do something, when I had the opportunity to stand up, to intervene, to save the life of one, I just stood there and I let that moment pass me by. Tonight, you have been presented with the problem, you have been presented with the crisis, and you have been presented with a solution. Do not let this moment simply pass you by. It's time to stand. It's time to say enough. It's time to have courage. And it's time to be encouraged. People tell me all the time, I don't know, Abby, I don't know if we're going to win. They've got Bill Clinton and Bill Gates and stacks of bills. But you know what? In the end, it really doesn't matter how much money they have or who they have on their side, because we have the number one advocate on our side, and that's Jesus Christ, and we will win this battle. Thank you all so much, and God bless you.